At some point in our lives, we have all worked very hard for something we had great expectations for, only to not immediately achieve the results we thought we deserved. Occasionally on this channel, I come across comments from users who say they have bought several books or courses from various personal growth gurus and have applied their teachings to the letter, but they haven't seen the desired results. These disappointments, in almost all cases, stem from the fact that most people, erroneously, view life as a game of chess. However, the reality is that each of our lives is much more like a game of poker. In this video, I will explain in detail what I mean by this, analyzing 9 similarities between the game of poker and the game of life. Toward the end of the video, I also want to throw you a challenge, and would love to hear your opinion on it, so please leave a comment and let me know what you think. But first, I ask you to follow the video carefully to understand the various arguments. The man in the photo on your screen is Magnus Carlsen. Ask 1,000 professional or amateur chess players who the best chess tournament player in the world is, and the answer will be unanimous. At just 33 years old, the 5-time world champion is considered by many to be the best chess player of all time. This other man in the photo on the right side of your screen is Michael Adamo, a 29-year-old Australian poker player. He is considered today the best poker, Texas Hold'em tournament player in the world by his professional peers. Not by everyone, though. If, as we did with Magnus, we asked 1,000 professional poker players who the best tournament player is, expect to receive 40-50th different names. Stephen Chidwick, David Peters, Justin Bonomo, Mikita Bodyakovsky, Jason Kuhn, Fedor Holtz. I could go on for a while. Furthermore, amateur players will tell you completely different names like Phil Hellmuth or Daniel Negreanu. In short, unlike in chess, it's pretty much impossible to define who the best poker tournament player is. But why this discrepancy? The reason is simple. In chess, the best player always wins. And when I say always, I mean at least 95% of the time, maybe more. The luck factor, even in the short term, is almost non-existent, and a very small sample of games is enough to determine if one player is better than another. In poker, however, despite being a game of skill, otherwise there would be no professional players, the variance factor of the game makes it much more frequent for a less experienced player to win against a more established player. Having said this, over the long term, the luck factor diminishes, and the more games are played, the higher the probability of success for the stronger player. This is the first lesson we can learn, and the first, most obvious analogy between poker and life. The best player, the most prepared individual, does not always win in the short term, as luck has a significant impact. But over the long term, this factor decreases and gives way to our skill. For those who don't quite understand what I mean, I'll make a brief example in a different context, as it's important to grasp this. Why is it that if a top world football team plays a match against a mediocre team, they might very well lose? But at the end of the season, are always the same few strongest teams contending for the championship title? Because in the short term, anything can happen, but over the long term, generally the best teams emerge. This is why in my videos you often hear me talk about long-term thinking. We often have no control over what can happen in the short term. While if our life were a game of chess, we would already know that each correct action would correspond to a positive result. Lesson 1. True results are measured in the long term. The second major reason why life is much more like poker than chess is that poker is a game of incomplete information. In chess, all the information is available on the board, and we know that if we make the right decisions, we will win the game. In poker, it's not like that. We don't know our opponent's cards, their playing style, or level of experience, unless we have played against them before. Chess follows deterministic logic, where every action has a predictable reaction. Poker, on the other hand, has probabilistic logic, where sometimes the right move turns out to be a losing one. The same is true in life, for example, when we decide to start a relationship with someone. We don't know everything there is to know about them. If we decide to get married, it's because we believe there is a good chance the marriage will work. But we can't be 100% sure. About 50% of marriages these days end in divorce. Do you think 2 people would get married if they knew for sure they would end up divorcing one day? The sooner we start understanding that every event in our lives is based on probabilities and not certainties, the sooner we will begin to understand that many of the failures we encounter are perfectly normal, and we should learn to accept them as such. Since life, like poker, is a game of incomplete information, all we can do is focus on making the decision we consider right, rather than placing too much emphasis on the outcome of that single choice. In poker, You can go all in as an 80% favorite and still lose the hand. It happens more frequently than you might think.
Matt Affleck is going to have 41 million chips or no chips. He needs to dodge a king, jack, or 8.
The river card. Oh, is an 8!
The same in life. Don't assume that just because something has a low probability of happening, it can't happen. A negative outcome should not change your mindset or influence your future decisions. The goal is always to make the right decisions. Lesson 2. Focus on making the best decision with the information available to you. Don't focus on things you have no control over. Many people, when they hear the word poker, still associate it with images from a Clint Eastwood Western movie. But today's game of poker is very different, far removed from that reality. It's very similar to chess in many aspects. In fact, today a novice chess player can learn to play relatively well quite quickly thanks to the possibility of practicing and studying game techniques through computer programs. The same with poker. While 20 years ago studying the game mostly happened through exchanges of opinions among players, today study occurs through the use of sophisticated solvers or dedicated programs that teach the best strategies. But do these studies guarantee victory in poker? No, or at least not in the short term. For several reasons. One of these is that poker is also a game of people. While studying with solvers allows you to make the right move following the optimal model of game theory. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, you can find a full video on game theory on this channel, link in the description below. As I was saying, while studying with solvers allows you to make the right move following the optimal model of game theory, this does not take into account the fact that our opponent is not a computer that will always make the so-called right move, but a human who will make their own move based on what they consider right. And often, especially among amateur players, these moves will be influenced by the player's emotions at that precise moment, as well as by technical deficiencies that can still lead them to make moves different from what is considered optimal. The same in life. We can think in a super rational way, but we must also consider that we are dealing with flesh and blood people who are not computers and have emotions that can lead them to sometimes make irrational decisions. This clearly does not make them bad people, but it makes them unpredictable. Improving your emotional intelligence quotient and learning to understand and communicate with others is a key factor for success in life. Lesson 3. Study and learn to think rationally, but also understand that most people make decisions based on emotion. In poker, typically at a table of 8 or 9 players, the best players play between 15 and 30% of the hands, depending on their playing style. Sometimes you might go long periods without playing a hand, and that's okay. In poker, as in life, having patience is extremely important. Every day we are faced with choices and deciding whether to pursue various opportunities that come our way. We don't have to seize them all. We need to be selective. But those opportunities we do decide to pursue, we should do so decisively and aggressively, just like in poker. A passive player will never win at poker, nor in life. Those who sit and wait for the perfect cards to play won't get anywhere. If we wait for the next big project to fall out of the sky, we're likely going to wait a long time. Identifying the right opportunities and knowing how to take calculated risks are essential skills in both poker and life. I said calculated risks, not random risks just to satisfy one's own testosterone. Lesson 4. Be selective with your choices, but confront the opportunities you decide to pursue aggressively. Take calculated risks. As mentioned earlier, in chess, all information is available to us during a game. This is not the case in poker, and for this reason, an essential part of the game of poker is knowing how to bluff. For those not familiar with the game, bluffing means making your opponent fold a better hand, allowing you to win the pot without having to show your cards. The difference between a good player and a mediocre one is how they bluff. The mediocre player will do it on a whim, randomly. A good player, however, will tell a story. They will play their hand in such a way that with each betting round it seems stronger than it actually is, to be truly convincing and lead the opponent to fold their hand. The same thing applies in life. Not all of us are born with the same fortunes and privileges. Some people are dealt excellent starting cards, others decent, and yet others mediocre. Those with excellent starting cards will have a higher chance of success, but this doesn't mean that those dealt mediocre cards can't succeed in winning the hand. Each of us should approach life trying to do our best with what we have. If a poker player keeps getting bad cards during a game, they have two choices. Either keep folding, limit the losses, and inevitably end up slowly losing their chips, or they can try to make something happen. Come up with something to win pots that, looking at the cards they have with which they shouldn't win, but manage to do so thanks to their skills. Lesson 5. You can't choose the cards you're dealt, but it's your duty to play them the best you can. Many believe that poker is a game of physical reads and psychological plays, probably due to the image that poker still has in the eyes of the masses. Yes, this is a component of the game, but it's not nearly as important as many think. In reality, it accounts for only about 10–20% of the game's strategy. The 80–90% of the game is based on mathematically sound choices. It's no coincidence that many poker champions have a background in statistics and mathematics. The same applies to life. Many people waste too much time on things of little importance, dissipating their energies and attention. Attention and energy that could instead be dedicated to what is truly important. If tomorrow you're offered your dream job, would you really turn it down because you are forced to take a 20-minute bus ride every day? I don't think so. Lesson 6. Focus on what is truly important. Avoid distractions of little significance. One of the best ways to learn new lessons and improve in poker is by losing. The same applies to life. Sometimes, both in poker and in life, we win purely by luck. We don't make the optimal choice, but things work out and we forget about it. The next time we might make the same mistake, but we'll probably be punished for it. However, when we make mistakes and lose, it's different. If we are self-aware enough to recognize our mistake, we are presented with a great opportunity for improvement. We don't want to keep making the same mistake over and over. If we do, we're missing out on a great chance to learn something. Lesson 7. Learn from your mistakes. As in everyday life, both in chess and poker, there are different levels of thinking. This means that very often a person or a player might make the right choice, but for the wrong reason. In poker, this also means that lower-level players often find themselves judging plays made by higher-level players, perhaps considering them wrong, when in reality, they just don't understand the more complex thinking process behind a specific play made by a professional against another professional. The same in life. Sometimes you will be judged by people who lack the competence to do so. Often the best decision is not the most popular one. It's not the one that the majority would make. Life is not a popularity contest, and being able to make sometimes controversial decisions, even at the risk of making a fool of yourself, is part of the game. Don't be afraid to make such decisions, and if you need advice, seek it from people whose opinions you respect. Lesson 8. Don't care about the opinion of the masses. Don't be afraid to make unpopular decisions. Finally, the last lesson, but perhaps the most important and fun. Do you know why there is so much money circulating in poker, a game in which tournaments are played all over the world every week with hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in prizes, and why there is so little money in chess? This brings us back to what we learned in the first lesson of this video. Fundamentally, in chess, no one wants to play for money against a stronger player. It would be pure masochism. In chess, as mentioned, it's very easy to determine who between two people is the stronger player. There's no escape. If you feel like playing for money against Magnus Carlsen, you might as well just wire him the money and save your time. In poker, however, it's not like that. Short-term luck leads almost all players to overestimate themselves. Almost all of them, from the strongest player in the world to the absolute worst, poker players have selective memory that leads them to remember the plays where they were unlucky and thus lost, while they quickly forget when they were the ones to have luck. In short, when they win, it's skill. When they lose, it's bad luck. And this is a blatant analogy with the game of life. Most people have an ego that leads them to think they are better than they really are, in any field, and consequently to deserve more. We tend to remember when we suffer an injustice, or something we consider as such, but we quickly forget when we are the ones receiving perhaps an undeserved favor. 9. We all tend to overestimate ourselves and have selective memory that makes us believe we deserve more. Often, this is not the case. Be objective. To conclude, remember that the results each of us achieves in life are simply a combination of the sum of the decisions made and how much luck has assisted us in these decisions. The better the decisions made, the higher the probability of success, as the luck factor will have a less significant impact. However, nothing is guaranteed, and even less is owed. Focus on making the best decisions, that is, on what you have control over. As promised at the beginning of the video, I want to hear your opinion about what I am about to say. In my opinion, both chess, but especially poker, should become subjects of school teaching. Yes, you heard me right, they should be taught in school. The result would be phenomenal and would bring the following benefits to students: improvement in logical and rational reasoning, enhancement of their emotional intelligence, understanding of statistical basics and probability calculations, learning to be comfortable with uncertainties, and to make decisions with incomplete information. Learning to control their emotions, limiting the impact of these emotions on decisions. Learning to take responsibility for their decisions, and to pay the price for wrong decisions without someone else paying for them. Those of you who have studied the German philosopher Immanuel Kant probably know that he was a gambler and promoted the idea of attaching monetary value to one's opinions. I agree 100% on this point. Kant proposes betting as an antidote to one of the great evils of society, the false confidence that arises from ignorance of the probabilistic nature of the world, from the desire to see black and white where we should rightly see gray. In a world where everyone talks and feels almost duty-bound to publicly express their opinions on any topic, in a world where everyone complains about not having enough freedom of expression, how nice would it be if every opinion we express, especially on controversial topics, was accompanied by a certain amount of money? And if the opinion we are so convinced to be absolutely right turns out to be wrong, we lose our money. Hiding behind a hypocritical "I never gamble," which in other words means, let me continue to spout nonsense with impunity, would no longer be an option. What do you think would happen in such a scenario? I'll tell you, all of us from the first to the last, including myself, of course, would talk less and think more before expressing an opinion. Now tell me, what do you think? If you like this video, I recommend the video Game Theory: How to Win at the Game of Life with a Scientific Approach, which is also one of my favorite videos on this channel. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you a great day. Till next time.